The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists. Ben Ark from LN Bits.
Evening all.
Josh Shigala from the Standard.io.
Oh, well, if it isn't my favorite human.
Victoria Jones from Satoshi's Page.
Hello, hello, everyone.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to Issue 1. Issue 1, Jack Mallers' new company. It's called 21. Jack Mallers to lead Tether, Softbank, and Cantor Fitzgerald-backed Bitcoin Treasury company called 21 Capital. It will launch with 42,000 Bitcoins. The company claims to be different from Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy, as it will also be, quote, focused on Bitcoin promotion. The Cantor stock skyrocketed 130% as people began buying the stock blindly under its old symbol CEP before it changes to its new symbol 21. Hey, 21, I've heard of that before. I remember that. They had a cool logo. Has everyone forgotten 21? The company that wanted to put a Bitcoin miner in your toaster? That's right. They wanted to turn the internet into the blockchain and the world's largest stock market. They raised $120 million, and we're going to make USB charging hubs, OEM routers, and toasters with Bitcoin chips inside. All they ended up releasing was a $400 Raspberry Pi that made everyone angry, and all $120 million disappeared. So I'm not sure why you'd want to celebrate that name by bringing it back, but here we are. Some people are being very critical of the 21 company, saying that it's a, quote, corporate exoskeleton for Tether's global liquidity machine, and that SoftBank joined so they could get that 2,000% return on Bitcoin. Ben Ark, what do you think of Jack's new company and their 42,000 Bitcoin?
I think it's positive. I mean, so we're always criticizing MicroStrategy for not kind of contributing back to the ecosystem, which actually gives Bitcoin its value, and just benefiting financially from, and we've spoken about it in previous shows, and it's kind of a controversial subject because people like, well, he can do whatever he wants, and that's true. But at the same time, there's lots of great free and open source projects. There's lots of projects within the industry which do need support, and he has the backs to support them. And by supporting those things, it also increases the value of Bitcoin, so actually increases their holdings and how much they're worth. But I guess that goes against the point of the MicroStrategy part in MicroStrategy. So I quite like it. You know, I think Jack Mallers is a good guy, and he's always been very positive for Bitcoin, and I think it's good that there's a similar type of company which people can invest in, and then they also know that when they're investing in that company, that some of those funds are going to go back to bolstering the ecosystem and making Bitcoin more useful. And that's, you know, I think that's a positive thing. I can see people's reservations on the Tether connection, but the reality is Tether has huge bags. And I think the investment from Tether is 1.6 billion, which is going in. They're part of the 42,000 Bitcoin. And for them, I imagine they're just moving their Bitcoin from one wallet to another wallet, onto the treasury of the company. But we need more MicroStrategies to exist. If this thing's going to exist, we need more of them to exist. And I do think it is, you know, we're still quite early when it comes to these big institutional investment companies which have found that glitch in the system, that they can just keep buying Bitcoin, hold it on their balance sheet, and then sell stock in their company and just keep accumulating Bitcoin. So yeah, good luck to them, I say.
Josh Shigala, is Ben right? Do we need more MicroStrategies, maybe an even more Bitcoin promoting one?
The more the merrier. The thing is about Jack, like I like him. Just want to put that out there. He seems like a cool guy, but I just don't get where he came from. Suddenly this kid was suddenly everywhere all the time, suddenly famous. He created one app that had a really nice interface, And suddenly he was the one getting Bukele to accept Bitcoin. Suddenly he was the one that was, just always in the news. CNBC, like, oh, here's Jack Mallers. Who is this kid? Where did he come from? Why is he so famous all of a sudden as a Bitcoiner? And he was very bullish on Lightning and Bitcoin. And like I said, I've met him once. But he wouldn't remember me, but I did remember at a Lightning event. But always a bit suspect when people just come out of the woodwork and out of nowhere. He was such a young kid. I suddenly had millions of VC capital in his firm, or whatever his company was, with this nice interface, and and now this, like, 42,000 Bitcoin. It's this young guy. What? I don't understand. I don't understand how people do it. I mean, I guess it's well connected. I think he had really well connected parents in banking or something. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But
yeah, no, his granddad started the CME, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. They're like old Chicago money, heavily connected in that world. Yeah. So that helps. His mum was the Bitcoin mom too. So she had quite a sort of big following for a while in Bitcoin. And then when he finished college, he just had a lot of access.
It just happened, like, boom, suddenly. And he's
totally
so young. I was like, who is this kid? Where's he? What? Yeah,
this is
Bitcoin's great.
It's strange for me because
I'm taking care of $50 million in my VC fund. And I'm like, well, who are you, dude? Your voice hasn't broken yet.
I love that he always does his interviews in his dressing room with no clothes in it.
No,
Notice that.
Like he's just moved in.
Yeah. His house is so big, he's got a whole room for a wardrobe, but not had time to buy the clothes yet. He needs a wife and a harem of girlfriends to fill up his closets.
Yeah, exactly. He needs to get some baby mamas.
My internet, it's a very strange flex to have that empty room. And I feel strange in this one too, because I've known of Jack for a long time. Like Ben said, his mother was Bitcoin Mom, who follows me on Twitter and supported the Mad Bitcoins Patreon. And she used to tell me about her son who would play speed chess and that he would write computer programs to play chess. And I was like, what an interesting guy. I love, chess people. And it turns out, like Ben said, and I was going to try to mess with Josh live, but yes, his grandfather was the chairman of the board of the Chicago Board of Trade, and his father founded one of the largest futures brokerages in Chicago. So I guess it's mainly about connections. That being said, hey, Jack, give us a job. Sponsor the show. Sponsor the World Crypto Network. It's not too late. We haven't been incredibly critical of your new product yet. It's been 5 minutes, but no, it's never too late. And wouldn't that be nice? Give Knox a grant.
Yeah. No, like I said, like I don't want to pick on the guy. That was me personally. I just didn't know. I don't know where he just popped out of nowhere, and he was this. It was just on every news channel as this instant fame guy behind Bitcoin. But okay, it makes sense.
I think he leaned into that role. He leaned into the role of the American, in American businesses they always want the cult of the entrepreneur and the genius kid behind the company. And I think that was that was part of the projection, which I mean was probably good for VC money, but for people us in Europe and other parts of the world is always a bit cringy. So I can see why you were like, who's this kid? Why has he got so much money? God damn it.
Instantly.
But beyond that, take that part of him away, then he's a good guy.
And I like that he really focused on Lightning to get, that was the the L2 Bitcoin.
And he did legitimately build the Zap wallet, which was cool early on in Bitcoin, Lightning, which was useful.
Yeah.
It is funny though how the number one strategy in international business is the pirate at 40, all buy Bitcoin and hold them for you strategy. It seemed really simple, and then now it keeps spreading and metastasizing. And another reason, I think, in addition to his well-known banking background, and I've even heard he's connected to Las Vegas casinos and all kinds of things, Josh, is I think the reason that Jack is so successful is he used to watch Mad Bitcoins every day after school. That's what he told
There
me.
it is.
Come
There it
home
is.
from school, watch that Mad Bitcoin. So that sounds pretty good to me. Victoria, what do you think about
I think you should.
Jack's new company, 21, again?
Did you really say that?
Yep, he said every day he'd come home and watch Mad Bitcoins.
Well, you were the only show to watch, to be fair. In 2016, there was nothing else.
Well,
So-
and I was the only one targeted towards children. No one
Yeah.
else was teaching the children about Bitcoin, even now.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, I mean, to put a positive spin on it, I think given where the world is right now at this moment in time and the tools available, if you wanted a strategy that completely maximized the potential of Bitcoin, then this would be it, based on our current financial structure and our current legal structure. But as I've mentioned several times before on this show, Bitcoin disrupts all of it. And the moment you get to a stage where people are actually, the only thing businesses will accept is Bitcoin, and that's the only thing people want, that's the point at which our current society completely transforms, in which case a lot of these companies are going to be in a tricky position, and people who invest in the companies rather than holding the Bitcoin are going to be in a tricky position. In fact, as I was reading the article, the phrase that sprung to mind was the Tower of Babylon. So of course there was this idea of someone who kind of built this tower because they got everyone to kind of build this tower that was going to be the strongest. And the thing is, the wind blows the wrong way and it's like a pack of cards and the whole thing crumbles. It's like the Jenga game from The Big Short. This is what is being built. And under current circumstances, people assume that our current legal structure is likely to perpetuate and continue to exist. But when Bitcoin on the ground disrupts that, which it will always have the potential to do, in fact, that's what we're waiting for, the whole game changes. And in that situation, do you really want to have invested your 401k in a company like this and not actually own any Bitcoin in your own hardware wallet? I would strongly caution people against that plan. That's what I have to say.
It is interesting. I think there's kind of a sliding scale out there where if you made, 100 times your profits or 1,000 times your profits, they might be there. But what if you made 100,000 times your profits or 1,000,000 times your profits? Do the people running that company not reevaluate and, like Victoria's saying, maybe accidentally run out with the Bitcoin or not give it to you or not let you withdraw it, things like that? There is a big difference in holding your money in one of these things versus holding actual Bitcoin. But I think people won't care. Obviously, people want the easy solution. They want it to be click, click, click.
They won't care until it's too late.
That's right. They're not going to see it coming, and they're going to be very surprised when it does happen. And they're like, oh, and then it's the ultimate of all ironies, right? Satoshi's like, people should hold their own stuff. And then we get into another crisis because people aren't holding their own stuff with the thing invented by the guy who said you should hold your own stuff. But I've got a plan here for Jack. We're going to run it down here. What should he do with this 21 and all these new billions of dollars? Number one, give me a job. We'll get polo shirts. We'll get stickers. We'll get a travel budget. We'll get conference tickets, cameras, and microphones, right? Boom. That's all we need. But then the problem is that I don't know that I agree with their strategy. Obviously, by holding 42,000 Bitcoin with a plan to keep buying more Bitcoin, it's a really cool plan. The problem is it destroys what makes Bitcoin interesting and unique. Bitcoin is interesting because you can send it around like a currency. The fact that a giant bank and another giant bank and some other giant bank are all working together to buy all of the Bitcoin so that they can hold it in one place and never send it around does not help make Bitcoin a currency. And if you don't want to take my word for it, let's go to Tim Draper. He's a huge Wall Street investor, invested in lots of early Bitcoin startups with Draper University. And as Draper says, referring to gold, he says, Tim Draper, gold is dead. It just sits there. Bitcoin moves, borderless, permissionless, programmable. You can't buy coffee with gold, but with Bitcoin, you can, without banks, inflation, or friction. And I think we need to not lose sight of that. Ben said that Jack made the Zap wallet and he was early into Lightning, and that's true. And he needs to not lose track of that as these banks say, Bitcoin is an asset for us to own and for us to hold it all. I agree with Tim Draper. Bitcoin needs to move. It's part of the thing that makes Bitcoin Bitcoin. So if you take that away, the whole like number go up forever thing that you want it to be gold, it doesn't go there, and it just becomes a collectible. It has to move to be interesting and to stay interesting. So
yeah, there's a good point by Starship Schrodinger's Destiny, which is you can't own Bitcoin in your retirement in your 401k in America. You tax for your retirement account, and it's similar with pension funds. If you have equity in another company and you've got some stocks in Vanguard, you need to move them to somewhere else, then you're limited on what you can do with them. And this is a mechanism for people to be able to get exposure to Bitcoin if they're locked in for whatever reason into sort of traditional financial system, or if you're an investment fund. So I think it needs to exist. And of those people who do invest, then I'm sure they'll also accumulate Bitcoin outside of traditional finance. But currently, sadly, in some financial scenarios, you can't have Bitcoin on the balance sheet for your 401k. So why not go buy have some of this stuff instead? 21 Capital or MicroStrategy.
And what we need is an app that rebuys the Bitcoin after you spend it. So you buy it, you spend it, you hold it. That's what you need. That's the solution. And that makes everybody happy. The bank can keep holding the Bitcoin forever. The people can spend it and keep Bitcoin as a currency, and it can stay interesting. And that's what we're going to come to eventually. But we're just going to take a long time before we get there. Any more on this issue? I can't think of an exit question. I mean, I guess it'll be successful. They have tons of Bitcoin. They have famous people, tons of money. Let's go to Ben Mark. Are we gonna hire Tom Brady to promote this thing? Is this going FTX? What do you see next for 21? Are we gonna hear about it a lot?
Well, I mean, hopefully it was strong on MicroStrategy into contributing a little bit more to the ecosystem beyond just making some financial instrument. So yeah, hopefully having another example of this in the market where they are actually focused on making Bitcoin more adopted is a good thing for that part of the industry.
Josh Agala, do you think it'll make a difference with MicroStrategy? Is there just two giant silos of corporate Bitcoin getting bigger and bigger?
I mean, all of these things, once they start seeing success, others join. And so hopefully VCs in Europe and family offices and such start to do the same MicroStrategy. But I'm always surprised how people can screw up such large amounts of money. Like when I hear these projects raise, we at Voltoria, we raised all of $1 million, and we ran for, almost 10 years before we sold it on. And I hear these companies, they raise $30 million, and then like next year, it's gone. It failed. And I just think, how did you screw that up? How did you it was a good idea and you screwed it up. So I hope they don't screw it up. I don't think they will. Jack seems like a smart guy, I guess. And he's got well connected. So let's go. Let's see it.
I'll bet they get the same marketing guys behind FTX and get the green screens and the Matt Damon and the fortune favors the bold and the brave or whatever. I'm sure they'll do it, Josh. It's going to be great.
Was that FTX? That ad?
That was FTX.
Oh wow!
We all know how that ended.
I can't believe the original 21 raised $120 million, Thomas. That's incredible. The toaster guys, the hardware scammers, $21 million.
Well, at least toaster makes sense. When they said they're going to put a miner in light bulbs, I'm like, light bulbs are already hot. Like you don't want to add more heat to a light bulb. I don't get it. What?
Well, the toaster also doesn't make sense, Josh, because it gets hot. Like spa heaters, house heaters, things that
but you could be toasting it with
the Bitcoin in there.
ASIC. With the ASIC, so you
But what did they do with the money? $120 million.
I agree, Ben, and that's why we need to reach Jack now.
Bitcoin.
Well, he still has the money, and he hasn't spent it all yet. As they said in The Big Lebowski, a Corvette is only part of the money. He needs to give it to the World Crypto Network, like $10 million. Just like drop it accidentally, you won't even notice. Like 120 million disappeared in this Balaji thing. Imagine if he'd given 1 million to us. We would have way more video cameras, more microphones, more shows, and it would go on, like Josh says, for like 10 years. It'd be like, that $1 million is still getting spent for us. Whereas these other marketing people, they could burn it up overnight for you. Overnight, they could burn it all. Let's see. Do we go to Victoria? Go ahead,
Yeah,
Victoria.
it's very easy to waste a lot of money on marketing. When I did my MBA, in the marketing section, we were given a computer simulation called the marketing game, and we all had to play it. The idea being to figure out, how much you could actually earn from spending the money. And literally, it was so easy to make a company bankrupt by using the wrong strategy with marketing. That is a really easy way to lose all your money. Wrong marketing strategies. So yeah.
Well, we'll
Lesson
have to
learned.
see how it goes. He's the boy genius. He's got his company. He's a Vitalik 3.0 or whatever we're going for now. I'm sure it's all going to work out great. And yes, hire us, hire the show. Ridiculous amounts of money. As Krusty the Clown said, they backed a dump truck up to my house. A dump truck. Moving on to issue 2, Bitcoin price prediction 2025. Can Bitcoin hit 100K again? Here's what the chart suggests. And there it is. It's all the same chart. It's always the same thing. But the real interesting thing here is Tech Dev, who has been saying the same thing over and over again. He says that it's not so much the halving or other things, that it's the business liquidity cycle, and that every 4 years or so, the business cycle goes down, prices go down, then the business cycle recovers, goes back up, and prices go back up. And according to him, right before the recent kickoff, he says this chart says the largest Bitcoin move in 5 years has begun. Josh Shigala, what do you think about the price of Bitcoin as it rockets back up and it might reclaim 100K?
Oh, look, everything's possible in Bitcoin. So, the strategy, the micro strategy that everybody could use, not financial advice, is just every payday, if you got some little bit of split savings, instead of putting it into the lottery, instead of buying the scratchy, instead of buying 4 beers, have 3 and put 1 in to Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever But don't go. If you're new, don't go anywhere else. Just stick with the blue chips. Don't go anywhere else. I've seen far too many people lose their shirts too early.
It's also so hard to go from a no coiner to a some coiner. But I think that's what you have to do, right, Josh? You have to get some skin in the game, get something out there, because everyone out there is like, I could have bought Bitcoin at this price. I could have bought it at that price. And that's never going to help you. Like, you got to just give up, get some at whatever price it is, see how it goes, hold it for a long time, and it should go up.
Yeah, it's always a gamble. Everything in life's a gamble. You're going to start your small business, that's a gamble. Everything's a gamble. But Bitcoin, for me, is a pretty good gamble. The odds are pretty good that it will go up. And if you do it on a weekly, if it goes down, hey, you're getting it cheaper. If it goes up, hooray.
And a shout out to Tune In Drop Out in the chat. He says, gold used to move. It simply became unable to function in the 20th century global economy. Bitcoin can become the functional replacement to gold in the 21st century. And I do agree with that. And I also think it's important to notice how gold's value diminished and it became less and less interesting when it stopped moving, when it stopped being the currency, when it stopped being the thing that you could trade for that was backing stuff up. It became disconnected, and that Bitcoin could have the same thing happen to it if it just becomes an asset that people hold in their giant treasuries.
But gold versus Bitcoin shouldn't be the argument. It's not gold versus Bitcoin, and everyone always gets this wrong. It's Bitcoin versus fiat. That's the enemy. Gold is on our side. Gold is a great hedge. Once you've made a buttload of profit in Bitcoin, put a little bit into gold and silver. It won't hurt you, just to make sure, because, hey, 6,000 years of history, 15 or whatever it is now. You just, a little bit of diversification is always good.
Well, the new thing they're saying, Josh, is they're saying that Bitcoin might replace real estate as the ultimate store of value. And that for generations, people have been buying land and been buying houses. And maybe it might be better to have this digital asset, this digital land, digital houses. We'll have to
that's
see.
very true, actually. My granddad owned, his family had a series of properties in Wales. And during the 60s, he was selling them all off because all he got from them was, the tenants wouldn't pay any rent because most of them were too poor. And he kept getting these bills for repairs. And so he just started selling them because he thought they wouldn't be useful. And I didn't know about this until the 90s. But of course, if he'd held on until it got to the 80s and 90s, people really don't recognize that the reason property values have gone up is because of the way fiat currency has worked. In the 50s and 60s, property was not that great an investment. It's only been in the last 40 years that it's really taken off. So the people who are saying Bitcoin isn't, it's absolutely right. I'd rather rent a house and own Bitcoin. And in fact, that's exactly what I do. So.
And let's go to Ben. What do you think about the price of Bitcoin, 100K or more?
Sorry, 600 billion.
600 billion.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good gamble, Bitcoin, because not only do you get to invest in this thing, which will probably go up and make you rich, it also will probably make the world a better place as well, and is a very useful technology for lots of people, all those unbanked folks. So it's I always say to people, if they're really seriously thinking about investing in Bitcoin, and they have been for a while, I would always say buy enough that if you lose it, it's going to suck, but it's not going to destroy your life. It'll just suck a lot, but you'll get over it, because it's still, high risk investment. We don't think it is, but it's still a high risk investment. So, but buy enough that if you lose, it's going to suck, because it'll probably work, and if it does work, then it's going to go up a lot in value, and you'll benefit from it. And then you're also helping to support an industry which could make the world a better place. But yeah, I mean, 600 billion. Why would it go to anything else, really?
And it's fun because sometimes you get to say, I told you so, but most of the time you get to wallow in the, I could have sold for this, I could have sold for that.
Yeah,
yeah.
What the number one bit of advice I would give, which I see a lot of Bitcoiners do, is they build up a stack, they do well on Bitcoin, and then they quit their jobs. And then they just, you can dollar cost average into Bitcoin, but if you dollar cost average out, your spending goes up, and you initially you have that fiat escape velocity where you're free. Your outgoings, and they're not the amount in which Bitcoin accumulates outpaces your outgoings. So you're always just getting more money. But then when you stop working, you then spend more money, and then you buy stuff, buy a new house, buy this. And that that fiat escape velocity just starts to dip. And then before you know it, you're burning down into your stack, and then it's gone. And we've got to know lots of people who were early in Bitcoin, and they managed to burn through their stacks that way. So be wary of that old chestnut.
And that's just what they said in On the Road. They said, President Eisenhower says, we've got to keep down the cost of living, which of course was justification for them to steal food from the military base. Moving on to the exit question, the Bitcoin predictor ball and source of all truth and knowledge in this universe. Josh Shigala, will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week? I recall a lot of pessimism last week, and I might recall staying bullish and being right again.
My mum bought a flight with some Bitcoin yesterday, so it's probably going up.
It's always the personal story. I know it always goes up when I sell. Victoria Jones, higher or lower?
It seems to be on a good trajectory, so I'd say higher.
Ben Ark, higher or lower?
Lower. Gonna go lower.
Lower, sticking with the pessimism. And here we are, shaking the ball, which could cause bubbles. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? You may rely on it. You may rely on it. Finally, some positive news from the 8-ball. It's been either not answering or pessimistic for so long. Check out worldcryptonetwork.com. We've got 4,320 videos, and we did it without raising $120 million that strangely went missing, and nobody even got their toasters. Like Josh says, they're going to put miners in light bulbs and toasters. Makes no sense. But you can check out those videos at worldcryptonetwork.com and probably learn more about 21 back in the past when we used to talk about the original 21. Moving on to issue 3. Indicted Bitcoin Jesus Roger Ver pays fellow Roger Stone, $600,000 to lobby for him. The longtime Trump ally is lobbying Congress to change the law that the crypto entrepreneur Roger Ver was charged with violating. As part of the New York Times article, it does say that Ver is, quote, accused of shielding his cryptocurrency holdings from $48 million in taxes. Previously, during this story, Ver and others had said that the IRS did not provide a number. According to the New York Times, the number is $48 million. That's what he could pay to presumably be able to leave Spain. Additionally, Trump has been handing out other pardons, interesting ones, to a Nevada politician who was convicted of using funds meant to honor a slain police officer on plastic surgery, received a pardon. She was the Las Vegas mayor and city councilwoman, Michelle Fiore. And Richard Hart from Hex beat the SEC charges, and Hex has been declared fully legal, no matter what you or anyone else may think. Let's go to Victoria Jones. What do you think about Roger Ver, the possibility for pardon given Olbrecht, Fiore, and others, and then a little bit on Richard Hart, who seems to have gotten away with all of it?
I like the Richard Hart story best because actually that doesn't surprise me because, I mean, I'm not an expert on Hex, but I did watch the documentary and I got the impression reading between the lines that ultimately he has designed his altcoin using the mechanisms of the existing financial system. It's like, I think after discovering Bitcoin, I mean, when you start learning about Bitcoin, it starts, you start uncovering exactly how the existing financial system works. And he kind of went, forget this Bitcoin malarkey. Why don't I just kind of repeat what the existing financial system is doing? Because for the people who are close to the printing press and the existing financial system, they're the ones who are winning. And all credit to his intelligence for figuring that out. And so if the lawyers decide to go after him for the strategy that he's used, if effectively they're blaming him for using a strategy that the existing financial system is blamed on. So if he, it could actually create quite a hoo-ha if he were to be found operating against the law, because he can just turn around and say, well, I'm just doing what you guys are doing. And so it looks like what's happened, he's gone, that's exactly what's happened. They went, oh, I better keep this one on the down low. Don't want too many people knowing about this. So actually, I'm not that surprised. And I suspect when Richard Hart, I mean, he's ballsy enough to kind of take that strategy and then throw it in everybody's face, and of course this is what's happened, and hardly anyone's batting an eyelid about it, because we've got all of these other crazy cases going on. So if you do a deep dive into some of these things, it can be very enlightening and very educational as to how the world actually works. And some of these cases should be making people sit up and go, hang on a minute, because, a lot of people have been criticizing Richard Hart for having a scam coin, especially compared to Bitcoin. But it's like, well, why is it a scam coin? And why would the SEC not challenge that when there was all this hoo-ha about XRP? And, there was a huge debate over whether or not Ethereum, whatever Ethereum was being blamed on. So, a lot of these court cases, there are interesting lessons to be learned here. And I think as each one kind of goes along, it's like another layer of the onion is being peeled back. It's like an education for everyone if you really dive into it as to, well, why did this one succeed? Why didn't this one succeed? But yeah, I thought I'd highlight the narrative behind Richard's one, because I think if you don't know anything about Hex, that's actually really interesting.
He's definitely making everyone I know kick themselves for not starting a coin. You could have started a stable coin. You could have started a parody of the US dollar where it just inflates and gives you the money, called it inflation coin or sarcastic coin.
But all of them tried, but why is it that these are the ones that have been successful? And I think that's the interesting story. It's understanding the mechanism behind them as to why, because plenty failed. But these are the ones that have survived, and the story as to why they've survived is interesting.
He did have an impressive mechanism where this one feeds that one and it goes back into this one and pays interest to that one. And that's always where it started to sound a little scammy. But I do agree with you, Victoria. It did resemble the current financial system, and it would have been very difficult for them to put down. So Maybe too clever by half. I don't know. Huge victory for Richard Hart. Ben Ark, what do you think? We want to talk about Roger Ver hiring a new attorney or a new friend there, and will he get a pardon?
Yeah, I mean, the Richard Hart guy, he was good when he was in Bitcoin. He was talking about Bitcoin. He's very eloquent, but you know, it was a scam. I mean, like the reward address or the founder address, which was having those 13337 Ethereum sent to it shortly afterwards. It was designed to enrich himself, and that money has got to come from somewhere. And part of his policy was to shit talk Bitcoin in order to try and give his thing some value. So he did inevitably just turn into a massive scammer shitcoiner. But while he was with Bitcoin, he was very good at talking about Bitcoin. It was kind of a shame that we lost him for that. So I will say that. But and he's a very interesting character. But yeah, it looks like he got away with it. So quite remarkable. On the Roger Ver, on the original topic there of Roger Ver, I mean, I think 600,000 is probably peanuts. Whether it's actually going to have any sway and help him secure a pardon, I don't know. But I suppose from his point of view, his money was spent. Good luck to him. Hope he manages to get out of Spain, get back to Japan, and be shielded by their non-extradition policy. He'll be safe there. He should never have left Japan. But yeah, death and taxes. If he owes them 48 million in taxes, they're going to come after him.
It is pretty horrible, the people that Roger is having to pay to try to get out of jail. And the interesting thing I'd like to see, Ben, now is the Richard Hart biography. I want to hear the whole thing. I want to hear, allegedly, I've heard he sold car stereos growing up. Allegedly, he's the spam king. And then now the Hex chapter, and so on and so forth. Whether it was an impartial one or maybe even one he'd write himself. I think I would read either. Josh Shigala, what do you think? Trump trying to pardon Roger, perhaps, or Richard Hart going off scot-free?
Yeah, I mean, I really find the Ver thing interesting and sad, because Ver did leave the US and got rid of his passport and everything way before Bitcoin was anything. I mean, before any of the riches from Bitcoin. So I think it's a land grab. It's a money grab. It's the old here, put it here, which is weird because there's just so much waste, as we've seen in like billions just thrown here and there from the government. Yet they're after this guy for his 46 million. So yeah, I hope he figures it out. I hope Roger can help him, Roger Stone. Yeah, in terms of Richard Hart, I don't like people that are that have zero taste and just throw their money at like nonsense brands and have all these baubles and like shiny things. I met Richard once here on this show, but I don't know. I don't know what people find so attractive about the guy. Like why? I think he's just got very good marketing and a lot of people creating memes and reposting. I don't know. I don't get the appeal of Richard Hart. Now, in terms of him winning the SEC, I think it was a massive gut punch to the SEC, which is great. Because their whole case was grounded in a total overreach. And there are legitimate scams, really hard scams. Look, whether Hex is a scam or not, I don't know because I haven't looked into it. But what I do know is that there are like just in the open scams where they just rug pull. Why isn't the SEC going after that? Instead, like if someone's trying to make something that's trying to scale in their wacky way and they've got their wacky way of going about it, it just seems. Yeah, I don't really know how to. It's 5:30 in the morning here, folks. So trying to collect my thoughts on that is hard. But it's I find So to round it all up, I find the guy very unappealing. I don't own any Hex. I don't have anything to do with it. But I don't think there's. I don't think there's a. It seems to me like that they are trying to solve a problem and trying to make something there that kind of works. I wouldn't invest in it. I wouldn't buy it. I'm I'm a big Bitcoin and Ethereum guy. I think those two are fine. The L2s are working on both those things and trying to grow the technology there. But yeah, that's my hot take.
It is really hard to understand the appeal of Richard Hart, Josh, but I think a lot of it has to do with this extreme wealth fronting. From the very beginning, he's got the backdrop with the candelabra and the case full of crystals and the throne and the, I don't know, smoking jacket or whatever. So he's fronting all this wealth now.
So unappealing.
I think so. And I think for me and you, we see it as like a theatrical thing, like a movie, like a set dressing. Like, yeah, he could be in the basement in Detroit in his grandma's apartment, and he's got a candelabra and he's got a throne, and he got him at a garage sale down the street, and he's great at set decoration and lighting and whatever. So it seems fronting, but I think other people look at this and they say, I want to be that. This man has this wealth. He will teach me how. I will follow him, and he will get me to the promised land of great riches. And whether it's Pulse Chain or Hex or whatever the new one's going to be called, or the old one, or it all just seems genius because they're just following a genius leader to victory.
I've had to just like walking around with, I don't know, Louis Vuitton tracksuits and like waddling with your fat bags, putting one in your mouth and like just gross. True wealthy people have an old ute with Bluey in the back, and you don't even know. You don't even know. They've got beautiful house and stuff, but they've got connections. They've got their wealth. They don't need to flaunt it, and that's true wealth. As soon as people flaunt it, you think they're trying to keep up with Joneses, or they're covering some hole. Be careful. Be careful following people that flaunt wealth.
Well, all that kind of like nouveau riche spending on all those brands. I mean, that money did come from somebody. There was someone who was investing some money at some point in time. And they got rugged, and that's the reason in which he's able to walk around in his Louis Vuitton, get up an outfit. Like it's off the back of people like suffering, and it sucks. So it's distasteful.
Well, I wouldn't say that. Like that's apparently, let's put that word in there, because I don't know if you rugged anyone. You can get wealthy by creating value.
It had no value. Like it didn't. There was nothing. There was nothing there. Like it was just a Ponzi. It had the pomponomics.
There was nothing
ethical
about it, but it was clever.
It was clever. Pomponomics side of it was clever, whatever. But like there were people who lost money, and that's how he was able to have money. Like that came from somewhere. That value came from somewhere, and then for him to just like spend on all this crap.
And I guarantee it, he would have taken the money and put it directly into Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, totally.
But unfortunately, no, it's all legalized now. It was a casino game they were playing. He set it up. It was complicated, but it was apparently okay. And we have to see that whole thing with the Louis Vuitton. That's all success now. That's all like, this isn't like FTX where he spent the money on Tom Brady and got sued and whatever. This is a successful operation.
But if his token is unethical, all he's doing is reflecting back how the existing financial system works, which is unethical, but most people don't know that. And so, I don't find Richard particularly appealing. I don't think many people do, but part of his character being so over the top is that it attracts attention. And actually that draws, if you look into the details of what he's doing, that attracts attention to how the existing financial system works. That's why he managed, I think he managed to get past the SEC. That's the genius aspect of it. He wasn't ethical, but the existing financial system isn't ethical. And, he might be vulgar in the use of his spending of the money, but actually many rich people are vulgar. The excessively rich people are very vulgar in how they spend it. I mean, have you seen how the Arabs spend all their money on planes? And various Indian weddings. There's plenty of vulgarity around if you look at it. It's all a matter of personal taste. But when it actually comes down to the nitty-gritty of how his system actually works, it's very enlightening if you if you follow the story through, which underneath it all, regardless of everything else, is still a service to humanity because he's pointing out something really important.
See, and I bet if we got the real Richard Hart on here, and if we really broke him down and got to the core of it, he would say, "I'm a performance artist doing what Victoria said, and I made $1 billion or whatever off of it. Pat on the back, like look at what I did." And we would pretty much all have to say, whether performance art or not, he made all this money, he did all this stuff. It's
No,
worth
man,
it,
you're
whatever.
cutting him too much slack. He came on and he said Bitcoin's broken, Hex is better, it's better than Bitcoin. Buy Hex, buy Hex, buy Hex, and then a bunch of people bought Hex, and then they lost their shit. Scammer. He's just a well-dressed,
Yeah, but how many
eloquent
people buy
scammer.
shares in various companies and then lose all their money every time there's a financial crisis? I mean, how is that any better?
I don't know, but I guess it's the SEC's job to try and stop these things from happening, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, but the
But I've
SEC
got to
doesn't
Brave
have a
new
leg to
world of
stand
pump
on.
fun.
I got to give Ben credit. He gave him slack beforehand. Ben was like, I don't mind. Like this was years ago. Yeah, while everyone was calling him a scam, Ben, you did say, yeah, give him a chance. And now you're saying
Well,
that. Good on you. Kudos
it,
for
it was
like
the
being,
it was kind of the
flexible.
whole idea of creating something which was designed to go up in value, losing this pumponomics, which is really just market manipulation or whatever. Like that was kind of interesting. You would have this asset class which would be dumbed on Bitcoiners, which would go up in value. But then where he really turned me against him was when he started saying that this thing was superior to Bitcoin and it was a
Yeah, I
replacement
hate
for
it too.
Bitcoin
So
and all
dumb.
that shit.
It's
It's
a bad
just
call.
bollocks, man. Yeah, that's when you're scamming. That's when you know that you're lying. He knows that he's lying, and then he's getting other people's. If he just continued with the original goal of whatever his project was, then yeah, it was
Well,
and
the interesting thing is the market hasn't really celebrated the win as much as the win is. I mean, it's down like 0.2% of what it was at its all-time high, losing more than 90% of its market value. So, it's yeah, well, let's see what happens.
But his token, there's no doubt about it, his token was a scam, but so is the existing financial system. That's the point.
Yeah.
but it's not like, well, my excuse for being a scammer is because the current financial system's a scam, so I'm just going to scam without any moral implication or.
But it
Yeah.
kind of is. If you actually watch that documentary, that's exactly what he's doing.
But that's not
And
right.
and him saying that his token is better than Bitcoin is like the financial system saying we're better than Bitcoin and it's only used by criminals and drug dealers. It's the same parody. It's like that's what he's reflecting. And and it's like no one gets it because they don't, most people just dismiss it without even actually looking into what he's doing. And it's not appealing on the surface, but that's the point. Most people are so prejudiced, they just dismiss things on the surface, they don't look any deeper. But actually, if you look deeper, that's what's going on. And it's actually kind of entertaining from an intellectual perspective. I don't enjoy watching, there's something very off-putting about his delivery, but actually the intellect behind it is quite amusing when you understand it, I think.
And Ben, I wasn't going to mention this, but as you bring up people making coins that are just like Bitcoin, Barry Silbert from the Digital Currency Group, who was a big early Bitcoin supporter, he's got his own new coin called Tau. And Tau is a artificial intelligence type coin, and it has a 21 million coin supply, just like Bitcoin. People say it's an affinity scam and blah, blah, blah. Ben, what do you think about Tau being launched by Barry Silbert?
I mean, again, there's an example of somebody who had a lot of Bitcoin, probably spent it all, now needs more money, and that's why he's running this thing. I don't really see the point. Just, I mean, whatever. Like, there's a whole world of alternative currencies and cryptocurrencies and shitcoin and whatever else. But for me, Bitcoin's the main event. It's the interesting thing. And some people want to exploit it, and some people, I mean, all of us were here early enough that we could have gone off and like made some scammy, pumpy coin, and made millions or billions or whatever, and we didn't. And we should pat ourselves on the back for being poor and having moral fiber, rather than rather than being rich and corrupt. it's a cup you can never empty. You'll just never empty. You need to. All you have is your honor as a human being, and this is why we choose not to scam. And it is a choice because we could have chosen to, and we're technically competent enough, but we didn't. And that's, we should give ourselves some credit for that.
I like that the supply is 21 million coins. It's the same number as Bitcoin. So it has the same value as Bitcoin. That's what my mind thinks right away. And I think they're related. I'm like, technologically, if you had the technology to make 20 million coins, but this guy has the technology to make 21 million, like the same number as Bitcoin, right?
What
Josh?
happened to the OneCoin thing? Do you remember the Sam Altman WorldCoin with the eyeballs, where they were scanning the eyeballs of the poor people? Whatever happened to that?
Happening. They're doing that thing that I want to do for Jack with the polo shirts and the stickers and the conventions. And I heard they're not even bringing the great orb with them. If you want to get scanned, they just kind of talk of the orb now, and maybe you're worthy. And I got so confused though when you said OneCoin, Ben, because I thought first, Dr. Ruja, who had the spreadsheet, she was going to double our money by November. I know it in my knower.
By doubling the amount of coins.
Of another coin called OneCoin back in the early days that was only a 1.0. There was only 1.0 of the coin. So if you had like a 0.1, you would have 10% of the one coin market.
I remember that too.
Fun. We used to have fun coins. They weren't all just scams. What do you think, Josh? Barry Silvert's got a new coin. Ben made me bring it.
I don't know much about it. Like I'm not. I think there's so much cool stuff you can do with the idea of cryptographically proven tokens. I think there's so much you can do. So I'm not just going to call everything a scam that has that. But I always find it it's a bit red flaggy as soon as people take two buzzwords like AI and crypto or blockchain and slam them together and then go out there and raise money on that. I was thinking, yeah, okay, red flag. It's Barry. Barry's a smart guy. He invested in a lot of stuff. I don't think he'd be out of Bitcoin because he invested in Kraken and all these big things in the early days. I think so. I think he's one of those guys.
It reminds me a lot of Trace and Mimblewimble, right? Where like he has a spotless record. He's a businessman. He found Bitcoin early. But you know what everyone who found Bitcoin early believes? That they're right about everything else. So he's right about whatever this altcoin thing is.
Yeah. I hope that we can create more value by creating things that solve problems. But generally, if I was to start another project, I wouldn't do another coin raise at the start. Rather, I would release that later because it's just fraught with people, holding a type of investment in you. And this is, I guess, where the SEC and all these things do come in, is that they say, well, you're selling pink slips, you're selling equity. But I fundamentally, as a more anarcho-capitalist type guy, I do love the idea of the ICO. I think it's a really nice idea of allowing your community or people that love your idea to have a share in its success. And we saw things like, for instance, the early Oculus. The guy rose millions of dollars from Kickstarter. No one got any shares of anything or nothing, no tokens, nothing. It was a Kickstarter. You just sort of donated it. They got an early Oculus, and then the Oculus guy sold to Facebook for like $10 billion or something, 6 billion, 4 billion, whatever it was. It was a lot. And none of those early backers got anything but a crappy first generation, like wobbly, dev kit. And so this, ICO solved that problem in a theoretical way, but also in a practical way. But there are also problems with it, like you see the pumpers and dumpers, you see the market manipulation, you see, because very low volume has the possibility of market manipulation. So, but I think these are problems that can be solved with smart contracts. whether that's on Bitcoin or Ethereum. But being able to solve these problems in technical ways rather than legal ways, I think that's the way to go. Raising capital is always going to be there. If you have a good idea, you need to raise capital to scale, and you're either going to get it from some VC who screws you over, or you can get it from a community of people who really support you and support your project. So foundationally, I think there is merit to the concepts of ICOs. It's just that the technology stack isn't good enough yet to mathematically regulate it in a way that makes it harder and harder for people to scam other people. And that's what needs to be solved.
It does seem like we're always offering people the chance to be an early investor in Facebook, but we always end up offering the chance to lose money as an early investor in Facebook. So I worry about the same thing here. And Josh, when you said you were going to make a coin, I thought for sure you're going to say, I'm going to make 3 coins, and this one's going to pay interest to that coin, which buys this coin, and then this one's going to burn that one, and some kind of great hex plan there. But of course, full disclosure, I did get to go one time to what's it called? Digital Currency Group Friends and Family Day or something. We got to go to Napa Wineries because I worked for Purse, and it was really nice. And Barry Silbert and I made pizza together, like made the mozzarella. And then we had to do a little marketing exercise. It was a whole thing, but it was pretty fun. So hopefully he'll do well with his new coin. We still have one more issue. We're running out of time though. Bitcoin's altcoins pump after Federal Reserve Board withdraws crypto notification rules for banks. Might be a good thing, might be a bad thing. They're saying that banks can now, I don't know, hold and offer Bitcoin and offer Bitcoin services. Ben Ark, what do you think about the new crypto proposal from the Trump administration? It looks like once again, the Bitcoiners got what they paid for. They wanted this law gone, and now it's gone.
I mean, he's profiting, isn't he, from being president there? But I remember at the Bitcoin conference, you could pay 50 grand and you could have your photo taken with Trump. I know these Bitcoiners from the conference who were posting their pictures next to Trump on Twitter, and I was just like, you paid 50 grand for that thing, which you could have just done with AI. And then I think to go for the meal, there was a meal with Trump, and that was 160 grand. So this is why the Roger Ver 600 grand, I'm like, it's a drop in the ocean. Whether it can have any impact, I don't know. So how much do you need in order to be able to hang out with Trump then with the Trump coin?
I'm not sure. I think they have a leaderboard now to get the VIP tour, but that's going to be a different issue. And this one, they got the bank rules changed, so they actually got something, not just
right. Oh, right. Okay. Oh, yeah. No, I don't know. Sorry, I wasn't listening.
Josh Segal, the Bitcoiners won another big victory. The banks can now handle Bitcoin. Ben doesn't care. What do you think, Josh?
Banks. So when we started Voltoro, and then the UK decided to have a regulation where you had to basically jump through a million hoops to get the license. And guess what? The regulator didn't pass any one of them. They kept on saying to every Bitcoin startup, well, we recommend that you withdraw your application so that because if you don't and we say no, then you won't be able to ever apply for it again. Plus, if you go to any other European country and try to passport and get their regulatory, you have to tell them, their regulator, that we said no. And so what happened, and our lawyers at the time said, well, you're not alone. Every single Bitcoin company is getting told this, to do this. So what was actually happening is they had this license and they were saying no to everybody without saying no. And that way the government could say, we have this license, just nobody's applying for it. And meanwhile, who was getting the licenses? The banks. The banks were realizing that there's a lot of money to be made in this crypto stuff, and let's cut out all of the startups. Let's crush them through regulation. And that's exactly what they did. And they didn't crush that. We were doing everything more than the banks. We were doing the KYC and this and that, and getting KYC every 3 months from people, even though they'd already KYC. Like, it was just annoying all of our customers. We hired people specifically for anti-money laundering. All they did was sit there twiddling their thumbs, but we had to have that person and pay them a heck of a lot of money a year. And we were bootstrapped, a little startup. So I knew it was coming. The banks are going to take this. There's a lot of correlation to like the weed industry is what I've heard, where you get the original, all the hippies that fought for legalization of the weed. And then once it happened, all of those that started startups around that whole industry got kicked out of it. And all you had was big tobacco move in and take the whole industry for themselves. And this is kind of what's happening with the banks, is that they're going to take this whole industry for themselves and regulate. And this is why I just don't like the term regulate, because it's this all-encompassing term that means nothing. But when I've been at conferences and people are like, who thinks that banks should be regulated more? And everyone just sticks up their hand. And what does that even mean? What, you want 10 more rules, 100 more rules? What sort of rules? Like, it's just such a stupid term. And so the idea of Bitcoin, look, I understand it, that you want certain rules for your country, that if you make an investment vehicle, it should have some basic scaffolding to stop things. But for me, I'm an old school Bitcoiner. I like the idea of math regulating things, because then I can see in the contract, okay, if this, then that, otherwise this. You can see the rule set, and that to me is the way you regulate this stuff. When it comes to a centralized exchange, I think because they're dealing with old school human contracts, they need to be regulated, because like Sam Bankman-Fried, he was creating contracts where he was saying, oh, I'm worth billions because my token is worth billions, and then leveraging off that and using all old school contracts. And then so you couldn't on-chain verify any of it because he was making, promises on paper. And so, yeah, that stuff probably needs some rules around it. But yeah.
It seems like originally, Josh, I imagine the law was to protect banks from holding strange investments or taking giant risks on cryptocurrency, because if they went down, all the normal accounts would go down as well. This presumably removes that barrier and removes that protection. And I do agree, if we had had this law, if we'd had this thing revoked before, there would have been no Coinbase. There would have been no Bitcoin industry. The banks just would have offered Bitcoin as another service, and they would have gotten all the fees on it. There wouldn't have been a Wall Street explosion of Bitcoin mining companies and all these other things. And it does relate back to marijuana in some ways, Josh. They had a similar system where they gave out a stamp that said you could grow and sell marijuana in the 20s, and they just didn't give out any stamps. So no one could, it wasn't illegal. It's just, we just don't give out any stamps. So it's a very strange thing. And I do agree. I remember back in the meetups, we all used to talk about, if only we had more power for banks, if only banks could hold Bitcoin more and get more involved. That's really what this revolution is about. And that drew a lot of people. That was a big seller back in the day.
It really, when conferences were all about, the revolution of Bitcoin, taking separation of money and state. And then suddenly we started to see more regulators being invited. And it was like, now the regulator from this and this bank, the head of, JP Morgan speaking, and everyone's like, ooh. And I'm like, what? Who gives a shit about that punk? But yeah, no, they slowly took over. But yeah, just quickly, I'll end here. Sorry for taking this, but I think it's an important one. For instance, a bad rule, right? The regulator told us we'd been holding people's Bitcoin, and we had a transparency protocol and everything. It'd been like 6 years, and nothing's ever happened. And it's not through lack of hackers not trying. People were trying to attack us every single day. We'd see it in the logs, and no one ever broke into Vaultoria. Meanwhile, all these places were being hacked all the time, and this and that, the other thing. And what the regulator said was, all of a sudden, what, you're holding other people's Bitcoin? You know, because it was a Bitcoin gold exchange, right? And we said, yeah, but no one's ever broke. We're obsessed with security. We do it very well. And they're, no. You need to have other people holding your client's Bitcoin. And we said, what do you mean? He said, who? We said, who? And they said, anybody but you. And then you can get the license. Huh? And so we have like these, it's just ridiculous. It's so bad. It's so bad. So there's a case of a rule, a regulation. Well, hang on. So you're taking a company that's been obsessed with security, hasn't been hacked in a very long time, has like, you know, a track record, and telling them to get rid of that and just hand the Bitcoin over to another company that holds it for you, for the client. And then that's fine. Then you can get the license. Yeah, well, it doesn't make any sense. Absolutely ridiculous. And it's all these unelected bureaucrats that have no idea of anything, not even part of the industry, making these silly rules. They didn't even know what cryptography was, really.
I don't know, Josh. It's an extraordinary amount of liability to be holding customer funds on an exchange.
That was horrible. It was the worst part of having a business.
I know at Purse, you know, we were just a shopping cart. You know, people would buy things, but people are really lazy with their Bitcoin, with their strategies. And, you know, Purse doesn't exist anymore. So I don't feel bad telling this is not a security problem, but people left lots of Bitcoin on Purse. People left lots of Bitcoin on, what was it? Local wallet or Bitcoin wallet, whatever it was back in the day. All these services that were not intended to hold this. And if you look at Coinbase now, they have a big warning up that they're going to move everyone to their Web3 wallet. And I don't know how they're going to distribute the keys securely through the internet with the screen capping and so forth. But I don't think they want to hold the Bitcoin either. I think it's a huge liability, and it's you know, like, yes, you were the best at the time to hold it. So that's a unique situation. But normally I would think for this massive liability, like if you had a massive cash vault at your Subway sandwich shop, it would be like, maybe no cash vault, maybe just the sandwiches, you know?
Yeah. Look, we told people constantly, don't hold Bitcoin on the exchange. If you're going to trade to gold, upload it, trade it, move it off. But, you know, like you said, people just want that secure. And that's what actually gave me the insight that places like Coinbase are always going to exist. And fighting that is not going to win, because people do want the ease of not having to learn about public-private key cryptography and all of that stuff. They just want to go, I need someone to call, especially businesses like MicroStrategy.
Well, and they've been trained by their bank accounts and their credit cards and all of that.
Sorry, I got the topics mixed up before, but I do want to just chime in on this. It reminds me a little bit of the repeal of this Glass-Steagall Act in '99, and then in 2008, a lot of people were like, "Well, that's, you know, partly probably to blame for the 2008 crisis by having banks be allowed to be investment banks as well as commercial banks." There is an issue when you allow your bank to do too many things that there becomes a conflict of interest, and they can screw it up. So it kind of reminds me of that. It adds another attack or risk vector to the banking industry, which could, you know, cause another 2008. So yeah, it's good to have these services separated out as separate services rather than all just under the umbrella as a bank. Oh, they're awful. Their technology departments are beyond incompetent.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys. Bitcoin Magazine says this is a big win for us. Bitcoiners getting more rights. Banks are going to hold Bitcoin now. This is what our lobbyists died in the mud for. This is it. Victoria Jones, what do you think? The banks can hold Bitcoin now. Huzzah.
Well, I suspect that well, from what I hear from general economic discussions, is the banks are starting to panic now because, you know, liquidity behind the scenes is drying up in terms of how it transfers between institutions. I mean, a lot of people think that governments can print more money, but it is somewhat restricted by interest rates. And of course, there's a big battle going on with interest rates at the moment. And so if a crisis happens there, the banks are in trouble. And I think it's not a big win for the Bitcoins. I just think it's out of necessity. The banks need other assets. And I think they're just being forced they're going to be forced to adopt things like cryptocurrency because that's what everyone wants, because it's been the best performing asset for the last 15 years. And so the banks are probably behind the scenes screaming because they're vulnerable. It's just like, if people aren't using the traditional financial system anymore, we either, if we can't beat them, we have to join them. I think that's ultimately the situation at the end of the day. I think they're being forced to capitulate, really. The people at the top of the financial system have known for a long time that Bitcoin has the potential to disrupt them. They're not going to win that battle. To a certain extent, it is a win for Bitcoin, not even Bitcoiners, because Bitcoin is just a system that's been designed in such a way that inevitably it's going to win. We don't know how long it will take, but inevitably it will. And I just think this is one of those inevitable steps along the way. The banks are having to capitulate because the banks are in trouble. And so they need another way in order to keep themselves solvent. And it will be a temporary thing before the banks no longer exist because we're using Bitcoin instead. So
It almost seems like the movie studios adopting streaming. They're trying to take the pirates' technology, but at the same time, the pirate system keeps running right next to the other system, and it's more efficient, and easier to use, and simpler, and doesn't have all the rights management and all that. And the same thing for the money. There's a more convenient form of money, and hopefully that'll be Bitcoin. If they don't screw it all up with 21, Jack, hire us. Send us some money. All right, we've got some quick update stories. You guys can comment on these. After legal drama, Shaquille O'Neal reaches settlement in the FTX class action lawsuit. They had quite a hard time serving Shaq with the papers. He's a hard guy to reach. Apparently, they actually found him at an NBA Finals game, so they had to buy a ticket to the game to serve him the papers, but they settled the lawsuit. This means that Tom Brady and others who supported FTX might also have to pay. Families of detainees in El Salvador and Venezuela decry Bukele's prison swap offer. The Salvadorian president denounced a tyrannical as he floats trading 252 prisoners with the fellow authoritarian regime, shipping the Venezuelans to Venezuela and having some kind of trade deal. It's just great not to have supported this guy the whole time and never to have been a supporter. It keeps getting worse and worse over there. And finally, as Ben noted earlier, Trump offers private dinner to the top investors of his Memecoin. I think we talked about this as a theoretical possibility, even just early on in NFTs and in Memecoins, that someone very powerful, maybe a sports star, could offer a dinner or a batting practice or something. But now it's happening with the president of the United States just days before the coin starts unlocking $5 million a day to Trump and his original supporters that own the original coin. I think they own 80 or 90% of the coin. Let's go to Josh Segala. Which one would you like to comment on? Shaq settles with the FTX. Bukele's trading human beings now. And Trump meme coin madness continues.
I mean, it's not like prisoner swaps haven't been a thing in the past. If they're expats in prison, you send them back to their country. I don't see the big deal. And I got to say, like, I think it's one of the safer countries in the world now, El Salvador, since he cleaned it up. So that's pretty impressive. The problem is, if you're imprisoned falsely, that's pretty bad. Like, you had some old gang tattoos, but you fixed up your life and you got out of the game, which is actually really hard to do as well, because that's something that goes through my head. What if that happens? Well, generally that doesn't happen because the gang will kill you for leaving. And so generally you're in the gang for life. It's really important to live in a safe society. And if you've got these people running around just murdering, massive cartels just running the show, something's got to happen. And some, I don't know. I don't live there. It doesn't bother me much, but I would much rather live in a safe society where total freaks with face tattoos all over themselves are actually, and, shooting up drive-by shootings and whatever else they get up to, are not on the streets where I'm trying to raise a family. That was probably a good thing. So But it's I don't know. I think it's hard to speak on all that because in one way you see the outcome, and hopefully they have judicial process, and they can slowly go through things and try to find proof of each one. But have you seen how many there are? I mean, there was thousands and thousands of gang members over there, so it's very, very difficult. It's a difficult problem. Difficult problem.
Well, and preventing that one person being in there, Josh, is why they did develop due process rights, where they would check to see if you're on a legal list. You get to see a judge. You have all these kind of rights before you get sent to prison. But what Bukele did was just pick up, allegedly, everyone with a tattoo in the bar. And then, unfortunately, it seems that Trump has done the same thing in the United States and then sent them down there. So it's really kind of a sliding scale of what you believe, whether, one man, one innocent man should be protected, or whether it's better to punish, all these people and let the innocent man.
Well, I mean, they've got. Well, Trump hasn't done the same thing. You have to be illegally in the U.S., and that's
we don't know though.
If you're illegally
the whole problem, Josh, is it's really simple. We didn't give them due process, so we don't know. Like we just don't know. We can't say either way because we didn't give them due process.
And so if you give them due process,
why we're a criminal state
dilute.
now. I mean,
okay, no, if you give due process to millions and millions of people, guess what happens? Your due process facilities get crushed, so you can't actually have trials for real murderers and stuff anymore because you're crushed with nonsense. And actually, most of these people have
everybody. It's not a right, and then you don't have any rights. So then you can be picked up
Show us your papers that you're allowed to be here.
They're not checking them though, Josh. You just said we don't have time to check them. We don't have large enough facilities.
No, they're checking little stuff. They're not taking them to court and doing full week-long court process. That's not what they're doing. But they're definitely checking papers. Where's your passport? Where's your papers? Wo sind deine Papiere?
Not sure about that, Josh. The whole point is not to check the things. And as far as the actual prisoners, it's been interesting because Bukele said a few weeks ago that the United States was paying them to hold them, meaning that he didn't actually hold them. He held a contract with the United States that they were upholding and getting paid to uphold. So if you stop paying them, they'd stop holding those people. But he's changed that now, and now he's trying to trade the prisoners for other prisoners in Venezuela. It's a very slippery slope as to the humanity of those.
Well, it's not a very rich country. So if you have vast prison systems, you're paying a lot of money to keep these people. And so if you're keeping expats who are also criminals in gangs, then you send those gangs back, those gang members back to where they came from. I mean, it makes sense. I wouldn't want to.
These are presumably the other criminals that they're being paid to hold, which they've kind of turned their society into a pay-for-play prison society. It's not a great thing for El Salvador. Victoria Jones, what do you think? They've got Shaq, Bukele's trading prisoners, and now you can buy dinner with Trump.
Well, I'm just wondering whether or not Trump's going to have to settle for, representing Trump coin when that fails. Given that, there appears to be a trend here of celebrities having to settle for supporting, fraudulent companies. So, yeah, be interesting to see how that one plays out.
It's really tough to take the Trump coin because it is such an obvious pathway for potential grift. And everyone sees it and everyone knows it. And at the same time, no one can stop it. Like, we have to let it happen. Like, you have to let the grift happen, and then you have to see if there's proof and whatever. And then later on, maybe we'll stop the grift. Maybe we'll punish the people. Maybe we'll get something for the victims. Or we'll just let them go like Hawk Tua coin. It's never too late to just let them go. All right. Any more on those issues, Ben? Did you have more to say on Trump coin or?
Yeah, I mean, the El Salvador one's a really tricky one because it was a war zone and it did have the highest murder rate in the world, and that was including at the time there was the Afghan war going on. And I've been to El Salvador and I've spoken to regular El Salvadorians because I was very conflicted about it. When I went there, I had all these judgments about the way in which Bukele was acting. And then I've been there 3 times, and I've spoken to El Salvadorians, and before they would lock the doors at night and hope that they didn't get killed. And now they're going out for dinner and they're living normal lives like everyone else lives. And he arguably fixed the country, but obviously, people suffer. There's going to be some innocent people who get locked up in jail just because they got the wrong tattoo. There is something very deeply disturbing and troubling about this new exporting of prisoners to different countries which haven't got good human rights records, and they aren't represented by, aren't given due process, and there are going to be people. And the real worry is that, we've seen this play out in history before. When you incarcerate a lot of people, then at some point, what's the final solution? Like they're not, they're not contributing to the economy at all, and you have thousands, hundreds of thousands of people all locked up. What do you eventually end up doing with those people? And maybe it's not Bukele, maybe it's some other country, maybe they send them to Venezuela, and then Venezuela sends them somewhere else, and then maybe they just start killing them. It's happened in history before, and it can happen again. So we need to be very wary of like these sorts of solutions, these sorts of solutions to problems. But El Salvador was a war zone, so it wasn't playing by the same rules which a lot of our developed countries where we don't have the same problems which El Salvador has. On the Shaquille O'Neal, I thought it was funny how they had like 20 attempts trying to track him down, and they had to like go buy the tickets and go to the Miami game, the NBA game, to actually serve the papers.
Tough gig.
It's a tough gig, that poor guy, whoever it was, who had to serve those papers, but I bet he had a lot of fun doing it because it's Shaquille O'Neal after all, and he got there in the end. But it's that social proof thing, isn't it? It's the reason people invested in Bernie Madoff is, I don't think you can blame Shaquille O'Neal in that scenario, because FTX had all these VC investors and everyone else, all these people throwing money at them, who were validating that this is like a legit company, and then why would you think that Shaquille O'Neal would have more due diligence than those people? So
Totally.
so hopefully just let the guy off the hook. He's just being paid to, I mean, it's there are many more people in the room who should have known better, who support FTX. So yeah, free Shaquille O'Neal.
It is strange that Shaq is the one being punished for this. Yes, out of all of the people, we've got to get shipped.
Maybe they'll ship him off to El Salvador and Venezuela.
Look, just to sorry, Victoria, go for it. I just want to say, like, I hope that El Salvador, because it's a tough job. You got to get you got to clean up, and you shouldn't have let it get to that stage in the first place. Your country shouldn't let it get to that stage where it's just a war zone. But you clean up, and then I hope that they can go through due diligence of each of those people and see. But first, you have to, and the judicial process needs to be cleaned up as well, because usually what happens if your country is that corrupt, they've taken all of that. So if you try to do a good judicial process, that's all corrupted by the cartels. And so first thing is clean up when you're in that state. And hopefully you don't let your country get in that state, in the first place. But there's no way.
In El Salvador's case, it was the US extraditing MS-13 members. So Americans, second generation Americans, they were extradited to the El Salvador, and they didn't have any skills or any way of contributing to the economy, so they just were gangsters. And then they were US gangsters, and they were sent to El Salvador because their parents were El Salvadorian, and that's where the real problems started to emerge in El Salvador. So it also actually started from extraditing criminals to their country. But I mean, Bukele arguably did a very good job for that country and the security of the normal people in that country, and he liberated a lot of people who were really, they were incarcerated because they lived in this very violent country. So yeah, now there should be a judicial process. And I think the murky area is when you start sending other countries that you're contracted to just incarcerate people, because then you're not responsible for the judicial process. The country in which they are sent from is responsible for it. And then if you just keep moving these prisoners around, it's like, where does the responsibility lie? And this is where you need to allow human rights advocates in to give some agency to some of those people and try to build up some legal framework. Hopefully they'll get there.
Yeah.
I think it was Senator Van Hollen who went down there, Ben, and he said the same thing that I think we're all kind of saying here, where El Salvador had this reputation of being known as a technology country. They were going to be the Bitcoin country, and they were, turning it all around. And now they're just kind of this place where Trump sends his prisoners, and they're this prison camp country. And that's why we've been warning you about dictators this whole time. And you've been like, it's fine. He's a good dictator. He's a friendly dictator. He only used violence that one time, bringing troops into the Congress to mess with the Supreme Court. Only that one time. Every other time, fine. And it's because of this capricious decision. Dictators can make random decisions, and democracies can say nothing because it's a dictatorship. So I think it's a bad look for them. I think they should get rid of the prisons. They should free the prisoners. They shouldn't trade human beings. This is pretty obvious.
Free which prisoners?
They should, well, it's a tough deal.
El Salvador.
The ones that the United States sent down there are not there legally. So the judge said to turn back the airplanes. So if you wanted to follow the, rule of the law, you'd send them back. The ones that they picked up off the street.
Well, hang on, they're illegal immigrants. They're
again,
illegal.
we don't know, Josh. We didn't give them due process, and we didn't convict them of any crimes, so we don't know.
I mean, I've known people that
they sent the
I've known
airplane
people that got kicked out of America for overstaying their visa, and they're never allowed back. Like, they got kicked out. It's just part of. If you overstay your visa in Australia, you get kicked out. If you overstay, there's nothing different anywhere in the world, and there's no court system. You just don't have the paperwork, and you're out.
Yeah, but they actually check the papers for the visa. I mean, you have to do the due process. Like, you have to, if you want to be a rule of law society.
How do you know that's not happening?
Rule of law. We know because the judge said to turn it around, and we know because of the people.
Yeah, but you know that he's like
no crimes. So we have the real people who are being hurt. That thing where it's like that one innocent person. We have at least 2 innocent people, and the other ones we don't know because we didn't check their papers. We didn't check their crimes because
if you're an illegal immigrant, and I'm not saying that's the worst crime in the world. I actually think a true capitalist system, you don't need those sorts of laws because you don't have social problems like that. But if you if you have a social security system, you need borders because it'll ruin your social security system. It'll just destroy it. You can't have both. And so if you've got borders and someone's there illegally, it's in the name. It's not the worst crime in the world. It should be a misdemeanor, but and it shouldn't go to an El Salvadorian prison for it. But
and you got to check their. I think that's what you're fighting for. Right? You got to check their papers. Due process is when they check the papers.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's not happening. I assume that's happening. I mean,
92% of the people down there have no prison record. So if it was a prison record or a criminal record that was supposed to send them down there, 92% of them don't have them. We know of at least 2, presumably on their face, people who are innocent who are down there, including one who had a court order saying, do not export. He was the guy, Abrego Garcia, he was an informant. I almost said snitch. He was an informant and for the gangs, and they said, do not export. If they had checked the papers, but they didn't check the papers because they're in a big hurry, because when you're breaking the law, it's good to do it fast, like a crime, in and out, fast. And that's what they did. The judge told them to turn the airplane around. They didn't turn it around because they're in a big hurry. And this is where we are. We have these questionable people that we didn't check. And in the old days, we always used to check. Like, good people, bad people, check their papers. We check them.
So what happens when you have millions and millions of people that you have to get through?
Millions of people, Josh, or you don't have any rights. Like, when it comes back to you, you would be one of the millions who don't get your papers checked. It would be me. It would be you. It would be everyone, because we would be.
Yeah, but then there's real crimes, and we can't do the real crime because we're going through millions and millions of people that are here illegal.
Streamline the system or hire more people or whatever it is. But if you stop giving people rights and you say that the rights are determined on if there's less people in line, you get rights today. If there's too many in line, you don't get rights. They're not rights then.
I mean, it's pretty easy though. If you've got a green card, you're good. If you don't, then you're not good. I mean,
if they don't check it, it doesn't matter.
I mean, I've got a passport. I've got a European passport. I can show that I'm allowed to.
And now you're in the prison. What do you do?
Hey? What?
They didn't check it. They put you on the airplane, and now you're in the El Salvador prison. What do you do?
Yeah, that's.
I mean, and you're sure you're one person. It doesn't matter. There's thousands of gang members. Like, it was worth it to get you out of there. But from a human perspective, like, either we're concerned with the individual or we're not. And if we're concerned with the individual, we need to have a system that allows them due process. I mean, that's what it was for. All right,
What does that due process look like?
due process is the
For that
fundamental
misdemeanor
principle
of
the United
overstaying a
States,
visa.
fairness and equality in legal proceeding, a right guaranteed by the 5th and 14th Amendments, preventing the government of depriving individuals of life, liberty, or property without following fair procedures. This right is divided into procedural and substantive due process.
But that's for people that are your citizenry.
It's all peoples. It doesn't say citizen. It says people. Because if you don't give it to everyone, it doesn't work. Like, because we just, say, how do we just say you're not a person, you're not a citizen, so we didn't check you, and then now you're in the prison.
I just think logistically there's a problem there of getting through millions of people. You'll basically clog up the court system, which is needed for actual real crime, for just 10 years. And then you've been there for 10 years, you've made a life of yourself, then they kick you out. It's also horrible.
There's ways of streamlining systems without taking away people's rights. It's just,
like just asking them, where's your passport? Where's your passport? I mean, that seems like a pretty quick thing to do. Where's your passport?
Oh, but there's millions of people. We were in a big hurry. We had to deport them. We didn't have time to do that.
I don't buy it. I never heard that they're not checking whether they're like, you check if someone's illegal, they're on record that they're not.
In the old system, yes. In the old system, yes. In the new system, no. In the new system, you just deport them. And then it's somebody else's problem because it's not even your prison, it was the original old system when the Germans built the concentration camps in Poland. They didn't build them in Germany. You don't build them at home. And then as soon as the prisoners are out of your country, it's outside of Germany. This is not our problem. Anyway, we're way off topic here, and you never win when you talk about Germany on the internet. Let's go to predictions or story of the week. Ben Ark. What are you working on over there at LN Bits?
Well, I'm waiting for the Michael Douglas film, Escape from El Salvador, not Escape from LA. It's going to be Michael Douglas, age 90, sent to because he's a dissenter and he doesn't like Trump, and he's sent to an El Salvadoran prison. He's got to escape, and Snape is back. Snake, not Snape. What am I talking about? What are we working on? I gave Nostr.com a lick of paint, and I don't know if you can get Nostr.com up, Thomas, using your magic screen sharing skills. I copied, Golang, and I thought Nostr's a bit complicated and technical. So I thought if I put a cute, fluffy creature on it, then it would be less intimidating and scary. So now I've got a capybara sat there to make it less intimidating and scary. So Nostr's not scary anymore. So check out Nostr.com. And I gave it a nice lick of paint. Made it nice and simple. And soon we'll be adding the ability to buy and sell your Nostr identities on Nostr.com. So go grab a Nostr identity. It helps support LM Bits.
Nice.
Yeah, but there was ultimately I was doing that and I was thinking to myself, like, surely there should be some fucking, it shouldn't just be me like squeezing the redesign of Nostr.com in over the weekend and the beginning of the week. Surely there should be a focus group, and there should be more than just me, you got this whole industry of Nostr, and then when people Google Nostr, they end up on Nostr.com, and then it's just me trying to make the website look appealing, putting a capybara on it. So yeah, hopefully one day
you did a good job though, mate.
Yeah, it looks all right. It's fun. Yeah, it's cute. Yeah. And put it on light mode, Thomas. Put it on light mode. Click on the little thing in the top right there.
Oh.
Light mode.
Ben, I didn't know you were such a designer.
I was throwing shit at a wall for about 50 hours. I made a little animation here where the little capybara signs a note and sends it to the ostrich. And he goes, ooh, and he verifies it with a key. I was trying to sort of show how Nostr works in the most unintimidating ways possible, but there we are. Yes, that was much of the beginning of my week.
I love the acronym, by the way. Is that really what it stands for?
Yeah, notes and other stuff transmitted by relays. Simple, isn't it? It's the other stuff bit which is powerful, though.
Yeah, the other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks
So that
very
was
good, man. I like the little cute character. That's
yeah, it worked for Golang, you know. So why couldn't it work for Noster?
All right, Josh Segala, a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
My prediction is everything's gonna be all right. Don't worry too much. Take care of your family. Be peaceful. Build business. Build value. And make friends. It's not really a prediction, it's just advice. Unwarranted, unasked for advice.
All right, Josh's advice corner. And Victoria Jones, a prediction or a story of the week?
Well, my story of the week is that I got to name drop that I was a friend of Ben to an American friend who was raving about Noster the other day. So I was
Nice.
like, yeah, I know the person who invented it. And now I know that he runs the website. So there you go. So I got serious accolade points for knowing you, Ben. Thought you might like to know that.
Liquor paint, Ben.
See, that's even before you put the lick of paint on there. Now it's going to get even bigger.
Oh yeah, there's no stopping us now. Now we got a capybara.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. It's been a long episode. It's still good to give us a thumbs up down below and push subscribe. Say hello in the chat or say hello in the comments if you're watching this later on. Send us a wave or just say hi. Thanks to everybody for joining us. And until next.